On this episode of Narcissist Apocalypse, we talk with a survivor named Rain. And Rain was raised in an extremely dysfunctional family with a narcissistic mother. It's a story of scapegoats, enmeshment, sexual abuse, dealing with death, and persevering through it all. Welcome to Narcissist Apocalypse, everyone. This is a podcast that gives a voice to survivors of toxic relationships. I am Brandon Chadwick, but my friends call me Chad, and thanks for tuning into this episode. So what is a narcissist, you may ask? Well, for the purposes of this podcast, we refer to a narcissist as anyone who has displayed a pattern of behavior that shows a limited capacity to appreciate others' perspectives. It is that simple. And now, before we get to our episode with Rain, I first want to thank everyone in the Narcissist Apocalypse community for listening to the show and sharing your thoughts by email, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Also, a reminder, if you have not left us a review on whatever podcast service you use, Spotify, Apple, Google, Stitcher, CastBox, etc., please do leave us a 5-star written review, as it helps out the show a lot when it comes to rankings. Now, if you've not been to our website recently at narcissistapocalypse.com, please do go there if you want to be a guest on our show. Top of the page, it says, be a guest on our show. Click on that little button. Takes you to a guest form. You fill out that form, it gets sent to me. We have a back and forth. Eventually, we'll make up a recording date, and we'll go from there. However, another way to be on our show is to go to narcissistapocalypse.com to be on our Letters to Our Narcissist compilation episode. On the side of the page, there'll be a floating button that says Send Voicemail. You press that button, records up to 5 minutes. You need another 5 minutes, press it again after you're done. You need another 5 minutes after that, press it a third time. We are collecting these letters for our Letters to My Narcissist compilation episode. And if you don't want to read the letter yourself and you want me or my old pal Melissa to read it for you, please do send an email with the letter to narcissistapocalypse@gmail.com. Now, other things that are going on our website at narcissistapocalypse.com/courses, we are now offering high-conflict parenting courses. And we have partnered with an online parenting company, and many of the courses we are offering were created by Bill Eddy. And if you listened last year to our episode with a divorce lawyer named Helen, you'll know that Bill Eddy is an expert in dealing with these individuals in court, and he's now helped create some parenting programs and courses to help you through divorce and to help you support your children, too. These courses are the most widely recognized courses by family courts across the country. So if you want to support the show and are looking for guidance, please do go to narcissistapocalypse.com/courses. And guess what, everyone? We are also now associated with a co-parenting app, Our Family Wizard. With Our Family Wizard, your schedule, expenses, and communication are contained within one app, so you can solve shared custody challenges faster and without confusion. That means less conflict and more energy to focus on your children. Our Family Wizard has powerful tools to document your parenting time, reimbursement requests, payments, exchanges, and more. We will leave the link to Our Family Wizard in the description of this show. Let's see, what else do we have here for you today? Our Patreon, on our Patreon, everyone, at patreon.com/narcissistapocalypse. Yes, we have shows that have never made it to air. We have follow-up guest episodes. We have pop culture episodes, but we also now have support groups on our Patreon. Every Saturday night and every other Wednesday, we are running support groups. So if you guys need support, it's only $5 a month. You support the show. There's a support group for you. Great group of people. Hello. All you support group people out there, you know who you are. We had a great time on Saturday night. And what else do I got here? I think that is it. Before we start the show, there's a lot of talk in this episode of sexual abuse There is discussion of pedophilia as well. So these are trigger warnings for anyone that won't be able to handle that. It's not really graphic, but, these things are mentioned. There's a couple instances where you might find it upsetting, but I really want to thank Rain for being on the show with me and sharing her story. It's an important story to tell. I know it's going to help a lot of people. So thank you, Rain, from the bottom of my heart for being on this episode and doing this with me and sharing your story. And now it's time for the show. I'm going to get out of my way and your way because I am rambling. Here is my episode with Rain. Welcome to Narcissist Apocalypse, everyone. With me today, I have Rain. How are you?
I'm doing pretty well, thank you. How are you? I'm a little tired. I had to travel this week, but I got home and I had kind of a dramatic week as far as like my whole story, but dramatic in a good way. I kind of like made some connections with some extended family that were helpful, I think, or going to be helpful. So a lot's been going on in the recent time, but everything that's led up to it is sort of why I'm here.
Well, first, thanks for asking how I'm doing. I'm doing pretty good. And the one thing, I had a Coca-Cola right before we started, and it's given me a bit of an upset stomach. But besides that, we've talked a little bit and gotten to know a little bit about your story. And this is a family story, and I think it's an important family story for everyone to hear. So, unfortunately, this has happened to you. You've dealt with a lot. And your families, or you and your daughter have dealt with a lot. So I just want to thank you for being here to tell your story. I know you're going to help a lot of people. And without further ado, I'm going to stop rambling. I'm going to get out of my way and your way, Rain. The floor is now yours.
Okay. Well, I guess sort of the whole synthesis of this is that I definitely have a narcissist for a mother, and that's created a really toxic relationship between me and her from when I was very young. I did not jive with her. I did not like how she was, and she did a lot of outrageous shit, but acted like it was just normal, I guess. And, not a lot of people in the family seem, I think they kind of understand that she's how she is, difficult, I guess, angry, I don't know, reactionary, punitive, but just sort of that kind of messed me up. Like, sort of on the outside, my mom looks normal, I guess, but she's really kind of very difficult to deal with. And I felt that way from when I was a very young child. So that toxicity with that relationship kind of spread, or it's the source, or it's connected to a lot of dysfunction then, because she's a narcissist. She treats her kids like there's a lot of like splitting. So she favors one, but also kind of cripples him in a way. And then I'm kind of a scapegoat and always have been, and like kind of outsider. I identify as my father's only child. Like, I am the only product of my mom and dad. From what I know, my dad was a pretty cool guy. He was present in the home, but I don't really have a lot of memories of him. He was not very present. I know he was ill at the end. He died when I was about to turn 13. And I don't know a lot because I was young. But he had, like a heart attack, and I think he was ill, like heart issues or whatever before that for a couple years maybe. But even before that, he was kind of destroyed by my mom, which I didn't really ever fully understand until really recently.
And to explain to everyone, you do have brothers, but they are from your mother and not from your father. They're from other men.
Right.
Yes.
Right. Yeah, I have two brothers who are from like my mom's first marriage, first husband, and then there was a brother who he's actually connected to my dad. he was like orphaned, and he was my dad's best friend's younger brother, and he kind of had nowhere to go, and my dad's friend couldn't really take him. I don't know. My dad and my mom like let him come live with us when he was like a teenager, but that's when I was born. So for me, he was always just in the family, but he's not related really to any of us. But my mom still treated him bad, which, and, you know, told me lies about him. So anyway, my dad got his PhD. And then what happened was, and I didn't understand this at the time at all, and my mom told me completely opposite things, but he was offered a job teaching out of state, you know, kind of across the country from California. It was, I think he was like Kansas or something, somewhere in the Midwest. And she wouldn't let him go, didn't want him to go. So he kind of like, she torpedoed his career. And then as I was growing up, she sort of told me, you know, kind of how he was just like, couldn't get a job in his field kind of thing. Like, oh, he's just this English PhD that can't like do anything. But, you know, he had opportunities that she didn't let him take. And that's on him. I kind of had to come to terms with, like, I'm a little bit angry at him, but, I mean, screw her, take me and go.
So she was sowing the seeds of doubt in you after the fact, after your dad died, that your dad was incompetent of sorts?
Yeah, but it's a lot worse than that.
Okay.
Then when I was in daycare, kind of as this all was going on, I was molested there. I do remember a woman coming to our house and talking to my mom, and that's sort of when I got told this story, because the woman was coming to apologize or whatever. She was the spouse of a guy. It was a weird thing, and like I said, I don't really remember it, but I do remember as a kid just being kind of, I don't know, I was aware of sex, and I had weird issues with, like, I didn't want to, like, ask to go to the bathroom. There was a time when I was, like, peeing in my room, and my mom, like, came in, and she was, like, all upset, and she said, like, you're worse than an animal. Like, animals don't even do this. But I think I was just kind of, like, having some weird anxiety issues as a young child. And I don't think anybody noticed. You know, they knew what had happened. And then actually right after that, when I was about 6, I guess, my family moved for a year. My mom and my dad ran this because my dad couldn't get a job, right? They ran like this group home for boys, like teenage boys. And when I was living there that year, for sure, I remember being in this like fort thing or something. There's like a big property that the house is on, and there was like 10 guys there or something, and me and like my parents and some other like staff or whatever. It was weird. It was a weird time because I just started school that year, but I moved to a new place. It was bizarre. I do remember being out in this like fort thing and like taking all my clothes off and telling this boy to take his clothes, or no, I told him to take his clothes off, and he told me to take mine off. But then I didn't in my memory. But then, like, I don't have any memory of anything after that. So I know that was weird because he was like 16 or something. But, oh, these kids are like damaged too. Like, for Christ's sake. And I remember one other one like pulling out his penis once. Like, and there was a couple others standing around. It was weird. And I told my mother that at the end of the year when we left, and she got mad at me and said, like, you can't, like, put yourself in that position kind of thing. Like, and so I think that's all, that stuff, early stuff is all kind of connected. Like what happened in the daycare and then what happened like next year and like all of the weird bathroom anxiety. I don't really know, but there's some stuff in there. And my mom gave me a bad message early on, which is that I can't trust her, you know, or she gave me the message that I can't trust her because I was telling her something and she, you know, I was 6 years old. So that was weird. And then, and when I went to daycare after that too, I had a lot of separation anxiety. And I remember as a kid, she used to kind of like goad me about that. Like, oh, you were so clingy. You were so clingy. You were so clingy. Like it was kind of funny or whatever. But honestly, I think like if like bad shit had happened to me, maybe like I was, you know, going through some shit. And nobody really recognized it. I don't know.
So at a very young age, you already had two awful experiences of abuse, and instead of being motherly to you, she was, I guess what's the best way to put it, more of judgmental towards your behavior instead of being empathetic to what you've gone through, and criticized you instead of caring for you and being a mother.
Precisely.
Okay.
Yeah, totally. And there was always like this, I was a mature kid, you know, because I heard this like sort of theme before, like on the podcast with other people's stories, that so like a lot of adult stuff was thrust on me early on. Some of it, I guess, came from the outside, but my mom had some to do with a lot of it. And from early on, I don't know, she just sort of had this laissez-faire attitude towards me. I was the only girl. I'm the only girl and the way youngest. So she had these teenage boys. I just saw a lot of stuff. And this comes into my family's kind of weirdness. At about like 8 is when I really started to like my mom. My dad was depressed. He wasn't, you know, they'd come home from the group home. He was like working in grocery stores and stuff, but he wasn't a professor like he had been offered, like the job had been offered, you know, a few years back. And she had a lot of negative stuff to say about him. She had tons of negative stuff to say about him, that he was lazy or he's just depressed, and he was actually sick. And I know now that, like, even like my mother's parents were kind of like horrified at the way she talked about him. So there was massive dysfunction in their family, because by about age 8, my mom started this like flagrant affair with this guy who's whatever, I guess, fine. But it was another dysfunctional relationship. Obviously, she was sort of like flouncing it around. My dad had some other room. She had her own room, and she'd have this guy over. He was not a creep or anything, but he was just kind of like an idiot, and she totally treated him like an idiot. And so this guy is now around, and my dad's getting sick, and then he died. Like I said, he'd been sick, and I don't really understand all of it, but he died. And I don't think it was just, my mom didn't really skip a beat. Like, she had this other guy. She sort of acted like she was grieving for a while, I guess. But now that I see what it really is like to lose someone you really love, you know, I don't know what she was doing. And she didn't really seem to be too concerned with me, honestly. She sent me to counseling, but like, she sent me to my dad's counselor. Like, that felt weird. And I don't know. I didn't have anything to say to that woman.
Sorry. So this guy all of a sudden is hanging out at your house, who your mom is kind of keeping around. You have no idea what really their relationship is like. Your dad is most likely kind of beaten down by her and doesn't put up a stink about this guy who's all of a sudden hanging out there. She's getting something from this guy. She's putting him down. So obviously, you know, he's willing to be abused. Now, unfortunately, your dad passes away. Your mother's grieving is non-existent, and this other man has somewhat just taken the role, or is around and willing to be abused by your mom, and he's just there.
Yeah, and I mean, he was not around in any way. Like, he wasn't any kind of like stepfather figure or anything. But he was around, and he was like nice enough or whatever. And like, he had a daughter that was my age. I kind of knew her in school. Yeah, I remember once we walked home from a school dance together to like, go to her apartment, and like, my mom and her dad were like sleeping together, like in the living room, like on the floor or whatever, on like the pull-out couch or whatever. So it was like his room. And we were just like, what the fuck? And left. And so, yeah, there was all of that happening around the time that my dad died. And then a year after he died, I would have been turning 14. And she had some other like ex-boyfriend. It was like a guy she was dating before she met my dad. And so my brothers knew him. He's always been like presented as like a family friend, like always. He was kind of like hanging around again. It's my birthday, and I remember he gave me like a really cool bike, but I did really like and used. But he also, I didn't know this man. I didn't know this guy at all. Like I knew who he was from like family stories or whatever. I never met him, and I had just lost my dad the year before, and it's my birthday again. And he gave me condoms and the movie 9.5 Weeks, which is like a old movie from the 80s with Kim Basinger and
Mickey Rourke and Kim
Alec Baldwin, I guess.
Yeah.
Oh, Mickey Rourke. Okay.
Mickey Rourke.
Yes. I was young at the time. I never watched the movie, actually, but I remember when it came out. And I knew what that was about. You know, like I was already I was savvy about all this stuff anyway, but like I felt like super weird about that. Like, and my mom knew that. I mean, she was there, you know. I mean, I don't even remember. I remember it happening. I don't remember the exact moment or whatever. I was probably horrified.
So before this happened, what is your relationship like with your mom? You know, you're now 14 years old here. Your hormones have kind of kicked in. You're a teenager. Are you butting heads in a big way with her? Like, what's kind of going on? You know, let's say between the ages of 5 and 14. How did your relationship with her progress and then just get worse?
Well, I just tried to avoid her mostly. So again, back to like how I just I was so mature. She would always say like you would put yourself to bed as a kid, like, which is true. Like I didn't have there was no structure. And so, honestly, like I didn't need it, but so maybe I wouldn't have wanted it if I had it. But
so your mom is very neglectful. Is that the best way to put it? Like she put everything.
Yeah, emotionally neglectful.
Yeah, she put everything in your charge, and then I'm going to say, I'm putting words in your mouth, and I apologize, but my guess is that she'd say, you know, you're smart, you're good enough, you can do this yourself. Yeah. You know, she'd make it that you were a capable person, and at a young age, you know, you start thinking to yourself, I am capable, I can do this, and you feel good about that, but at the same time, there's no love. You're not being given any sort of affection. You're not being cared for. You don't know it yet, but that is kind of how eventually that will manifest in other ways.
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely. Yeah. I should always like take care of myself. Like I did fine in school. I did great in school. And, you know, I guess that's probably an area where like it's my strength. It's like, I know I could like, I guess I just always wanted to like get through and not have her like attention. I didn't want her attention because it was bad, you know. I pretty early on, I was not really about fucking with my mom. Like when she started cheating on my dad and stuff, I just like whatever. I saw this person is like awful. That's all I knew is like she didn't really care about shit, you know. She was doing what she was gonna do. Around the time my dad died, she got really deep into like feminist movement, and she was all about like activism, but it was always like she made everybody like be involved with her, and she like criticized everything. So I'm a teenager. She didn't like it if I wore makeup or shaved my legs, and it's like I'm 13 years old. And she didn't just like disapprove of everything, and I just felt like disapproved of in every way. So I knew I was already like had my natural talent, but if I did well in school and stuff like that and didn't cause a lot of trouble, like I wasn't going to get a whole lot of shit from her, and she'd leave me alone too. Like she was neglectful in the sense, like as an older teenager, I could do whatever the hell I wanted. And I, you know, I always was really responsible, but I could do whatever I wanted.
Did you feel, you know, obviously you are, your eyes are wide open because you're hyper vigilant to a lot of things based upon everything that's happened. You've seen things that you shouldn't have been a part of or shouldn't have happened to you. And your mom, in some sense, it sounds like she's acting like a 14 or 15 or 16-year-old girl that gets obsessed with something and then wants like everyone else to kind of do the thing that she's doing like a teenager. Yeah.
And she did a lot of like temper tantrum-y stuff, like always from when I was growing up. But for sure, I remember as a teenager, like holiday time, anytime like there was stress, like stuff, she would or even whatever. She came home and she was stressed out and she didn't like the living room wasn't vacuumed or whatever. She just did a lot of like yelling and slamming doors. She said so many times to me that she should have never had children. Like by the time I was like 4 or 5, I'm the only one I'm 15 years younger than everybody else. I'm the only one in the home. And like, I'm with her and my dad or whatever. That's how it was for most of my life until I was like, then in my 20s I moved out. And my other brother, the favorite one, like moved back in forever. So yeah, she did a lot of like, and then she would like slam doors, like scream like just like screaming, running around the house screaming. And then she would like slam her bedroom door shut and lock it. And just like, you wouldn't see her till the next day. And like, she'd act like nothing happened,
So I have a couple questions. Are you ready?
Yeah.
All right. So, as far as when she said something like, I shouldn't have had children, how did you emotionally respond to that?
When she said I shouldn't have had any children, how I emotionally responded was, that's a pretty fucked up thing to say to your kid. And bitch, I didn't ask to be born.
Were you
for yelling at me?
Were you angry? Were you sad? Okay.
Yeah, I was angry.
And
I was angry. Like, don't put that on me. Don't put that on me. You're the dumb one then. I knew that it wasn't my fault that I'd been born.
Did you feel like you had to live up to something for her, or you had to be good enough?
No, I just always felt like I was never right. So she would, remember she would say, she was always big on like, you're not nice to me and you're not, like everything is all like, I wasn't nice to her. She would say like my cousins were nicer to like her sister than I am to her. She always wanted to get like back rubs and foot rubs, and there's like that's part of like the emotional incest stuff. Like she wanted to be like doted on, or like I don't know. It's like she wanted to be doted on. She also wanted to take everything she could from you, and she also wanted like take advantage of you in any way she could for her own benefit, but then also criticize the hell out of you. It was, it's like the triad, narcissist triad. Like, dote on me, let me take everything I can for my own benefit, and then I'm also going to, like, tell you you're terrible. Mm-hmm. So I wasn't as good as my cousins. I wasn't as good as my friend. She, would say weird things like that. Well, I wouldn't go somewhere or do something that she wanted, and she said, well, your friend so-and-so will. And no, I mean, it was just bullshit. Like I told my friend, she's like, I don't know what the hell she's talking about. She's so awful,
So when you did have those quiet times where you, it is still parent neglect, but when you had those times when like she wasn't around at all, you could free reign to do whatever you want. For you, that's just refreshing. Those are like those moments where you're like you can breathe. You're like there's no shoe that's going to drop. You don't have to deal with your mom complaining, playing the victim, needing you to be her parent. So in a way, those are like, your child, like you as a parent to your mother, those were your times away, and it was a relief in those sense. And I guess you said your friend was able to recognize that these things weren't right. When did you start to notice that like everyone else's families are normal, mine is like, my mom is not right?
I just felt like I was weird. I knew everybody else's family was different, but I thought like I was weird, you know? I knew, like, I was like, oh my God, so weird. And just like all the, you know, I had all these brothers from different places and stuff. And, you know, my dad died, like, in that in itself, like, sets you apart. I just felt weird. Mm-hmm. And then I think psychologically I was, like, still kind of traumatized from some of, like, the outside, like, sexual abuse, I'm sure. I had a hard time finding myself. And I think part of what my mom's whole narcissistic toxicity is like tied into with her kids is like the independence thing. Like, she really does see us as like an extension of her, not our own people. And I think probably during my teenage years when I did rebel like against her more, or, you know, I would like, you know, talk back to her and stuff. It was the independence in me, you know, I think that flared something in her. It's threatening, right? Me being an independent thinker or not wanting to dote on her, like, she could tell that I thought she was full of shit. That doesn't feed her, right? I didn't feed her very much. I gave her a victim in a lot of ways, but when she was kind of like, when we were battling eye to eye, I did not feed that beast. I mean, I was damaged by it. I was confused by it, but I was defiant always, you know?
So you talked about emotional incest. Can you kind of go a bit further about like the I guess the degree to which it went?
Okay, so right. She always wanted shoulder rubs and foot rubs, and I like didn't want to do it. Like, I haven't done that for her for like ever. I was young, but she would have my older brother, the oldest, do it all the time, and he was always like the favorite. I guess he was like her oldest and the boy, I don't know. And no matter what, like, he never like, he's kind of a loser, not to, you know, talk too bad about him. I feel bad for him in some ways, but he sort of played, he made a deal with the devil, and my mother is the devil. And the deal was, she's not going to do, like, she won't come down on him and try and crush his spirit like she does to me, but she'll just crush it in another way, which is like, he's like her lackey. And she really, you know, she kind of like faded off. She had that weirdo that gave me like condoms. She still saw the other guy that she originally started cheating. You know, my dad was like, until I was in my teens or even like 20s, but that's after that, she basically like married my brother. He came home and he's basically been there his whole, almost his whole adult life. He lived there with her. And she really like coos over him and like she'd do his laundry and like iron his clothes and stuff. And she's not like that. She's a feminist. She's like, fuck all of you guys, do everything. I'm whatever. Not to bag on feminism. Like, honestly, out of all of this, my mom didn't have all bad messages, just like her delivery was horrifying. So like, whatever. So she really doted on this one older brother, and just the way she talks about him always. And like, he had no outside, like he didn't have any girlfriends after like a very young age. He's just living with mommy and taking care of mommy and running her errands, or she's like supporting him. He never like really he doesn't make any money. He never had hardly, like, for a brief time, he was a teacher, which, like, that we'll get into later. But he was kind of like he is your, stereotypical, like, guy in the basement, like guy living in his mom's basement kind of crap. And kind of weird, like I said, weird boundaries always. Like, he'll kind of, like, wear a robe around that, like, is almost, like, flashing in a way, kind of, and he'd pee outside a lot. I remember, like, just weird shit. He went on a trip shortly after my husband died, and it was like weeks later. While he was gone, my mother slept in his bed, and that's not the first time. Like, she'll go sleep in his bed when he's not there. Like, you know, she's missing a lover or whatever. It's just like, it's really nauseating. I'm not the only one that, you know, my other brother sort of noticed it too. He was a bit of a scapegoat as well. He's a total piece of shit, but he was also a scapegoat. it's just weird. It's weird. And she, you know, she totally supports him, really, financially. And yeah, he's just, his life is really bad right now. And we'll maybe get into that a little bit later because that's much more recent stuff, unless you want to get into
we'll wait.
Because, yeah. That's like the seeds. That's sort of like the seeds of where we get like 20 years later. You know what I mean? The foot rubs and like, he's just like the golden child. I don't know. She just like lights up when she talks about him. It's weird. It's weird because he is kind of like a doofus. And he's not a bad guy, but like, I mean, well, he is he's a bad guy. He's a fucked up guy, but you know, he just like, it's like he never took any responsibility for anything. He sort of like lets her run his life and, you know, lives under her roof and lets her pay all the bills. And he just kind of like is a little bit like a Peter Pan-y kind of thing, but never took any, you know, he didn't get married. He didn't have kids. He didn't like have a good career. Sort of like I got screwed out of having good older brothers because he's like, I don't know. He's no like mentor. I would never take advice from him. I think of him as kind of an idiot, but he's my brother, you know? And I think that her relationship with him goes way back like that. And the way he has turned out has something to do with her, especially because how my other brother turned out as well. His full brother. Those are the two full brothers from the first marriage. So I was just dying to get out of the house. You know, I was just kind of biding my time at that point. She kind of let me, at that point I had a little bit more control over my own life because, you know, I could work and I could drive and I could go where I wanted and do what I wanted. And I still didn't have any supervision. Again, like I didn't really need it. So fine. And I graduated from high school and I left for college. I had the choice of staying home and going to like a slightly better, like a more prestigious, school here at home, or go away and go to like a state school. And I definitely wanted to go away. So I went away to college, and I came home after the first year, and that's when I met my husband. So, and he's also a product of Narcissist. His dad was just like a drug addict and alcoholic. And unfortunately, my husband kind of ended up the same way. Not the same way as his dad, but he struggled with alcoholism and drug abuse, or, you know, drug addiction. And his mom just sort of enabled the dad. And so I met him. He was 17. He had been living on the streets for like 2 years. His mom kicked him out and his dad kicked him out. His dad kicked him out and his mom kicked him out because his dad couldn't get along with him. His dad was like verbally, physically abusive, just like, he was like a horrible guy. I didn't quite get it at the time, but that's like who he is, who he was, who he still is. And so my husband had been homeless and kind of bouncing around. I think a lot of really bad things happened to him during that time. He also has tons, you know, there was a lot of abuse in his life as well. Sexual abuse, physical abuse. His mother neglected him when she let a lot of this stuff happen and threw him out at 15. I met him after all this. You know, he was supposed to be finishing high school at that time, but like all of that was happening. I kind of met up with him again, and we were together, and we were going to do it, right? We're going to do it. And in a lot of ways we did. But my mom hated him until she could use him, unless he was useful to her. She talked, you know, I remember when I met him, she just said, why can't this just be a fling for the summer kind of thing? And it wasn't that. And he never really came to terms with a lot of stuff. And like I said, his alcoholism and drug addiction kind of took a course, and it was up and down, and we went through a lot of stuff. But I almost feel like we were like soldiers in a battle together, like fighting like the sickness like around us, you know. But
the fact of the matter is, I'm positive about today, is that he and I created together like the family that neither of us had. I'm positive of that. It wasn't perfect, but my kids, yeah, they saw two people that loved each other and had conflict and worked through it and stuck together and were friends. And like I said, our bond was lifelong, like you said. He knew me from when I was a kid, and I knew him from he was a kid. I feel like his brother and sister are my brother and sister. And I mean, the brother is kind of a hot mess, but his sister is like a sister. And I feel like he was my brother, and also like I had a third child in a way. I honestly, I get upset after he died when his mom like goes on and on about it, because it's like, I raised your child. You threw him away. She threw a child away, and you know, I love him. So yeah, that's that. But my mother, so it was a tense relationship. I think we understood each other on a level because of his mom and dad were kind of a lot like my mom, you know, and she did not like him. She talked bad about him a lot too, all throughout our relationship. And it's sort of like he did have weaknesses, right? Like I said, like he came from some pretty horrible circumstances, and he had a really hard time dealing with life. He was not a good husband in a lot of ways. He was not a good provider in a lot of ways. He was also like one of the coolest people anybody would ever meet. Like he was this great person. I loved him for a reason. I'm not an idiot. This was, you know, a once in a lifetime or a very rare in a lifetime kind of connection I had with him. And he was that great of a person. I don't feel that way about people that often. But he was pretty damaged, you know. And my mom sort of saw that weakness, I think. And so she would prey on that. And that was a weakness in my life too. You know, instead of, you know, I'm the girl with the husband who's a bad provider or whatever, you know, there's something wrong with me, instead of, I don't know, wanting to be understanding or, you know, wanting to help us in any way. It's just, she's always sort of like against it always. She got really mad at me that she didn't know that we got married because I was pregnant and we got married. She didn't know I was pregnant either. She found out I was pregnant, and then we got married. She found out later that we got married. She was really upset about all that always. She's always said that I'm like, you know, a liar or whatever because of that. But I didn't want to tell her anything good or bad in my life, ever, because it always would, you know, she'd always find a way to like use it or try to undermine me.
So after your husband passed away, you know, before your husband passed away, you know, you were dealing with your mom and his family, but sorry, it was mostly us. You know, during that time, like it was he and I more raising our family. We were involved with our families, but so trying to do our own thing, but it was all still impacting us. Yeah. Sorry, go ahead. Oh, no. So, like, during that time, like, the ups and downs, a lot of them were with just your husband and, you know, marital struggles. And then your husband passed away. And then did things bubble up again? You know, you're grieving your husband, and did things that, like, your mom somehow come back more in your life more at that point?
Well, she did right before he died.
Okay.
So he and I were kind of, you know, we had gotten through a lot of stuff. There was still some gigantic elephants in the room. I mean, when he died, I had no idea, but like I cleared out like 30 empty whiskey bottles, like from under the bed. I didn't even know that. When he died, he was somewhat drunk, not for an alcoholic. He didn't have like a super high blood alcohol. It was like double the legal limit. And he had fentanyl and Oxycontin in his system. So he was like he was an alcoholic and a drug addict, but he was functional, and he was still, you know, we still liked being together, and like he loved our kids and he loved me and I loved him. And we were doing pretty good. You know, we were doing our thing. We were not as connected with my family because what happened was he had a pretty good job there at the end. He actually got a great job that they called to tell him he got a week after he died. But he was in a different job at this point. He was doing pretty well, and he went to get his electrician's license, and he did really well, and he got it. And it was about 3 months later that my mom approached us and said she wanted us to help her do this, like, trying to build a second house on her property. I know it's something she always wanted to do. My 2 brothers were living with her at that point, like in her house, which is kind of old. And she wanted to build a brand new house for them to live in. And then my family would move in to pay the mortgage, and it would all be great. Like, I had a disabled brother. One of my brothers was disabled at that point. And it was like physically disabled. She was kind of taking care of him, and I don't know, it'd be better for him and good for the kids, whatever. The schools were close by, all that. I guess, I don't know, we got swindled. I thought that I'd spent enough time kind of on my own, independent, and my mom had some level of respect for me. And, you know, we did this thing. She wanted my husband to, because he had his electrician's license and he was, you know, friends with contractors, and he had, you know, experience with that. She wanted, you know, take out a loan and pay his friend, a contractor, to do this home build. And then, you know, my husband could do the electrical work, and all, you know, he did a lot of it. They all did, like, they both did a ton of the labor, but, you know, my husband did the electrical stuff. And so, you know, she got a really good deal on a really nice place that was kind of, you know, custom made for her by people she knew, right? Family and friends. And we moved in, and, you know, my kids were there. We were there. We were living in her old place. I actually had to move my brother out, the golden child, the one that she really, really babies and favors and sleeps in his bed. Oh, by the way, I had suspected that he was watching child pornography from the time I was about, like, less than 25 years old. Because of, like, certain, like, sounds and things I would hear from his bedroom, I was like, this motherfucker is, like, watching child pornography. And I told my mother that 25 years ago-ish. She didn't listen. She didn't care. She acted like her eyes glazed over, honestly. Fast forward, whatever. He is the one that is the golden child, and he wouldn't even move out of his bedroom. He's going to move into the new house that we had built him, and he didn't even move out of his slobby figure. He's like a total slob, like, just like filth. And I had to actually, like, me and my husband actually had to, like, physically move his stuff out of his room when it came time to, like, move in, and the new place was all done. And my husband was disgusted. He just, like, gutted the whole thing and, like, spent some more money on, like, just making that room better for us. So we moved actually into my mother's house, and she pulled some of her shit initially. I remember just, like, it was her house still, even though we lived in it and we were paying the mortgage and we were paying the bills. It was just, she, you know, she wanted things her way. When I went to put up curtains in the bathroom, because the bathroom, like, window, like, looks out into my 2 brothers' bedroom windows, she said she felt violated by me, that I wanted to put a curtain in the bathroom that, like, was ours anyway. She's just real weird. However, I have to say, my husband was this huge buffer. I don't know why. I don't know if it's my mom's thing with men. She saw him as useful to him. I think she was just trying to use him. He could fix everything that she needed in her house. And, you know, she was, I think, eyeing on having him, like, do a lot of stuff for her living there. And I would, you know, pay the bills, basically. And so after he died, that buffer that he provided, because, like, he really saw her for who she was. He saw me for who I am. I really trusted him, even, like, if he interacted with her. He made it easier for me to deal with her in a lot of ways. And when he was gone, it was like all bets were off. She immediately kind of started in on me. So I had a friend that had come, like, the first day after he died, and she was sort of helping me contact people and get a hold of, you know, like, a cremation service. And she spent the night at my house. And so it's not even 48 hours after my husband died, we woke up and my friend was there, and my mother pulled me aside, and she was upset. And she said, what is she doing here? You know, like, what's this, you know, what's going on kind of thing. I was just like dazed still. And I went and I told my friend. Luckily, my friend's like a little older than me, and she's kind of hip to narcissism. And she kind of confronted my mom and took me outside and said, this is horrifying that this woman has just done this to you. And then it got worse because my husband and my youngest kid had taken a trip to see his brother in Hawaii, and they brought home a puppy. My brother-in-law had like a litter of like accidental puppies, pug mixes, and they brought a puppy home. And so about 3 weeks after my husband died, my mother pulled together my two brothers that were living in the house that my husband built to berate me about this puppy and how am I going to take care of the puppy, and they don't want to have to do anything to take care of this puppy, and I'm just like terrible, and I've created this problem. I better solve it, and I'm awful. All of them. And this is something that my mom did all the time. My adopted brother, who he's estranged from her for a long time, he says it was almost like growing up in a cult, and he says he calls it public shaming. My mom would always call, she'd do like her temper tantrums, but then she'd always call these like family meetings. Like it was really like cooperative or whatever, like super democratic. But it was just tyrannical. It was like her time to just like rip into me mostly, never my golden child, like brother, but just like we aren't doing this enough, and we're, you know, always about her and what we're not doing enough to make her life better, whatever. And so it was like another one of those public shaming things. It made me feel like I was a kid again, kind of back in that type of situation. And I just like, I kind of lost it that night. I was losing it, and I intentionally got really dramatic with them. Again, my friend who had sort of seen how my mom acts said to me to do this if they ever like got really, she said, just act crazy if they like ever like come down on you and it's like unreasonable and terrible and you can't handle it. So I did act crazy, and I said, okay, fine, like I'm going to kill the puppy then. I just started like say, you know, or are you going to kill the puppy? I'm going to kill the puppy. And I started like, I made myself like laugh hysterically and stuff, so that it just sort of disrupted the whole scene so much that it just had to stop. I think my mom kind of knew what I was doing, and she, you know, she was just, I could tell she was kind of upset she didn't get to do to me what she wanted to do, but I was still in a really upset state over it. And so the next like year or so was just sort of filled with things like that. She would just like, she did a lot of like weird spying stuff, or anytime my kids and I were trying to talk together, she would sort of like start walking through the room. And so just, again, boundaries, like we didn't get a lot of privacy. I had no room to grieve with them and to be the mother, like sort of in charge of that, because I had my mother around kind of undermining me, or like, I don't know, just sort of like rattling me all the time. And she had this whiteboard where she would write stuff all the time, like your dog needs to be fed, or like the dogs are almost out of water, kind of stuff, like always just like nagging. And that's very much like she always was as I was growing up. So I felt like these patterns being repeated, you know, like I was being treated like I was, not only like I was a child, but, you know, like I was as a child, and I just couldn't handle it. So I was like, I got to leave. And she had, you know, I had said early on, I got to leave, you know, I'm taking my kids and getting out of here. And she made it seem like that was this huge betrayal to her, because we had done this big, you know, property thing and built her a house, and it's all just garbage because she can rent out the house. Like but she said, you're trying to bankrupt me and stuff like that. She was just very cold and very dismissive and about all of this, like family stuff. And, she also she told me that she was the only person that would listen to my husband. She told me that pretty early on after he had died, within like a couple of months. I think I was upset because she had moved his ashes or something and not talked to me or whatever. And she said, well, I was he was my best friend, and I'm the only one that ever listened to him, which is funny because like he really secretly thought she was like horrible, and she really only was using him. So I did leave. I left. I moved out of there, and like I said, I was like financially sort of more not unstable, but uncertain because my husband died, and he had just gotten this good job that he's going to be able to retire at 55, but he died at 40. And my mother upset at me for leaving, and she would do these weird creepy things where she'd come in my yard and come and say hi to my dogs and then leave, or walk into my house to say hi to my kids and but not say anything or to me or let me know she was coming by. Just boundaries again, like it feels like she was like spying on me or trying to make me feel like I'm not comfortable in my own home. It's kind of like she used to when I was living over there right after my husband died. If I ever was like trying to talk to my kids or whatever, she would just pass through. It's like she was trying to do that to me even after I had like removed myself from the premises. She was trying to come to my premises and do the same thing. So around this time, I found out from my kids that once we had moved out, she disowned me. Like she went to a lawyer and did all the paperwork and stuff to, write me out of her trust so that, when she dies, the house that my husband built for her will go to my brother and I guess to my kids, although who knows what she's going to do. She's always sort of used this house as like, oh, it's like her legacy and it's like, we will get it. And, oh, it's like this nice property and it's whatever. It's one dilapidated old house on a nice piece of property with a nice, 2-bedroom house in the back. Whatever. It's in a tight rental market.
But she's using it. She's using it as all my children. Here is this trophy. Who is going to win this and be the best child to me? And you yourself. You're a lawyer. I assume at this point, for many years. And the others don't have anything really going for them. So for you, you don't really need. Money might be tight or whatever. You're raising a bunch of children by yourself, but in the long run,
college isn't cheap.
But in the long run, you are because of your job, you're going to be secure, and you don't need to even think about that.
So when my husband died, I had the 2 brothers living with me, living on the property. The one is a golden child. Like he knows he's golden, right? He doesn't have to do anything. He has nothing. Like she just whatever eats it up. Like I said, it's not like he is a terrible guy, but whatever. It's just sick. And right after my husband died, and he went on that one, the golden child went on the trip, and she slept in his bed and made a big deal out of it. I remember she told me that when she got into his bed to sleep into his bed, that his hard drive was in the bed. And I'm like, ding, 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 that's his child porn, you idiot. I didn't say it then, but I was just like, how dumb do you have to be? I know he's watching child porn because I did. I knew. And I know what child porn is. I've actually had to come across some of it in my job. So, anyway, he's fine. He can have child porn in his bed and she's going to sleep in it and miss him. My other brother was disabled and he was there basically. He's dead now. It was the end of his life, basically. He was a hostage to her. You know what I mean? So, as far as buying for anything, they don't really care. I know my one brother that was not going to really live a long time. He had given up on life, and he's screwed up all kinds of ways, always. And he did have physical health problems. And so I don't know. It's more she kind of just dangles it or talks about it. She talks about when she dies a lot. When she's going to die. She's done it my whole life, and she's spoken about this property. She has built it up, and she built it up in my kids' eyes too. Talks to them about it. It'll all be yours, kind of thing. And it's like whatever.
So in the last 5 years, since your husband passed away, what I guess issues or things that have bubbled up to the surface that maybe you hadn't dealt with yet, or that just started to really show up?
Right. So this is kind of the path of the last 5 years. He died. It gets very unbearable with her and them there, and we leave, and she's creeping around. And I found out from my kids that she had disowned me because I was joking about it. Because, I mean, it's not like I didn't see it coming, you know, on a level. I didn't believe that she would go that far. I really didn't. But it's not like the idea hadn't. I mean, my friend who had seen my mom be such a jerk was like, she's gonna write all of you out because she can, you know, and she can, you know, make a big deal out of it. And so my kids told me, and they were kind of awkward about it because I was joking about it, and, you know, they knew this information. She had, you know, that's another like sort of manipulative tactic where she does this thing to me, and then she tells my kids about it, so it sort of like creates this tension, right?
She's using your kids as pawns and as little flying monkeys, and they have no idea.
All the time.
Yeah.
And I mean, they kind of are hip to her shit. Like, my daughter is a little bit like me. She's sort of, they both liked her when they were young and stuff, but they kind of see what she does. She told my oldest once that she was glad that my dad was dead so that he couldn't see what a bad grandchild he had, because, you know, my child wasn't like doing what she wanted or whatever at that point. And my kid was like 12. And so my kid remembers that, and they've heard me say, you know, she's a crazy asshole, you know. So they get it, but, you know, it's still putting them in the middle. And she sends them nasty notes. She's a nasty note writer. I've gotten a lot over my life, and she'll send them letters. I don't know, like if they haven't seen her for a while or something, saying, you're terrible grandchildren. I've done everything for you, and you don't even care about me, and, you know, stuff like that. She's great at that kind of thing, like the guilt and shame stuff. And it's always all revolves around her and like what you haven't done for her. And right. Never good enough. It's not like, I'm so proud of you or anything, or like, how are you? It's just like, you're awful. So I don't like it when I see her do it to my kids, because you know, it resonates, you know, it makes me feel bad, that it makes me feel responsible for the fact that she's, you know, abusing them too. But like I said, we have I did what my mom couldn't do, which is have a decent relationship with my kids. And so we talked about it and stuff. And so they told me that. And at that point, I wrote her a letter. I didn't even want to talk to her. I was so pissed. And I asked my brother, the golden child, he confirmed she had done that. And so I wrote her a letter and said, don't come near me. This was like 2 years ago now. Don't come anywhere near her. Don't come to my house. Like, stop coming over to my house and stalking me. And, you know, I get it. You wrote me out of your family trust. Congratulations. You know, your reasoning about why you did it was to help the kids go through college, which doesn't make any sense, because, like, at that point, I was taking out loans for my oldest to be in college, which they just finished. So, like, whatever. And, you know, just leave me alone kind of thing. And I didn't see her for like about a year. I think maybe we went over there briefly. No, I didn't see her even like at the holidays. I think that was like the first time. Not the first time I didn't see her like on the holidays. It was the first time. It was my first holidays, like having made the decision to cut her out, you know? And it was a little bit hard, but it was good, right? I had a lot of time. I made the right decision leaving because I've had a lot of time to really do the healing me and my kids like was needed to, you know? But about a year into me not talking to her, which was about a year ago, she called me at work, upset, and said the police have come and they've searched the whole place and they're looking for child pornography. And like my brother wasn't there. So, you know, she was upset, you know, and I went there. Like, that was the first contact I had with her in a year, but I felt like it was, I don't know, serious enough that I should go over there. And I kind of talked to her about the whole situation. I was trying to be as supportive as I could, I guess, but she was still kind of like making excuses for him. Like, he says that there's definitely not any child pornography on his computer and stuff like that, which I know is a lie. I know it's a lie. I know from my own suspicions. Oh, the first thing that she said to me when I went over there after she called me from work, I went and sat down and she said, "Did you turn your brother in?" Because I had spoken about this issue with her. I think I had even threatened to do it once. And so I said no, because I hadn't. Poetic justice. And so I kind of like talked her through the situation. Like, honestly, I kind of went into professional mode because it's kind of what I do. And my brother wasn't there, and he wasn't charged or arrested yet. That would come later. But she was very upset on her own behalf and on his behalf. She's very upset at how the police treated them. This is the feminist, right? Whatever. And like, your son's looking like a pedophile, but you're going to be upset about, like, you know, police brutality and, like, I don't know, Black Lives Matter stuff. Like, sorry, it doesn't apply to you. So she was upset about that. And I remember saying something, they took like all of the computer equipment. She had no like internet and stuff. And I said, "He'll get all that back, but he might not be able to go on the internet. I don't know." And she was like, "Well, if I have an account, he could just use it." Like, she was already trying to sort of like minimize any consequences or whatever, right? Like, make it easy for him. Or, you know, she was talking about breaking the law, really. And I'm just like, oh my God, I was kind of blown away at that point. I was seeing like the degree to which she'll go to for her little boy or whatever. And, you know, I'm thinking about how she climbed into bed with the hard drive. You know, all this stuff is like going through my head. And she started to kind of try to talk to me about her disowning me, and kind of tried to say that it's, you know, for my kid's own good or whatever, which is like garbage. And I sort of shut her down with it. And I wasn't upset. Like, I did. It was kind of the first time I was not like so upset. And I kind of felt secure in what I was saying and how I was feeling about her, and her, like, her craziness was so in my face. Like, I couldn't even doubt myself, you know? And I kind of shut her down about everything she was saying. And I'm not kidding. She faked a stroke right at that point. She started like going all woozy, and her head was going back and her eyes were rolling, and she started acting like she couldn't really like hear me or respond. And I was really upset. You know, I thought, I didn't know. I was like, maybe all the stress of this just like gave her a stroke. Oh my God. And I called 911. She made a big deal about she didn't want to go to the hospital. She didn't want to go to the hospital. And like, it was her decision, you know, and they were looking at me like she probably should go. And like, she finally decided to go. And so she got a bunch of attention, I guess. Like, she got out of the difficult situation with me, and she got some attention. And there was no more attention on like her and my brother and like the sickness going on there with that whole dynamic and this new criminal case coming up. And, yeah, like, I went home after that. I think I went back to check on her the next day. Like, there's nothing wrong with her. Like, she got discharged. They gave her some fluids or whatever. She was sure she'd had a stroke. She had no strokes. She was like so determined. She scoured her medical records for things wrong. She said, "I know that I am dying because there's something wrong in my chest x-ray." Well, her chest x-ray had an abnormal notation on it because she has like a curved trachea or whatever. Like, that was the abnormality. She said she saw something else, that she has a brain tumor. And it was like some other x-ray showed that she has like some small kind of like growth on the, like, inside the ear that's very common or whatever. It's not, nobody worried about anything. So I think she's trying to deflect. The next day she was like laying on the floor and on her bedroom, and she was like, "I'm dying," you know, and she wasn't. And so I had like that weekend with her. It was like, you know, pedophilia and cops and the hospitals and fake strokes. And I went home like the Sunday night, like that whole weekend, sort of, it was Friday to Sunday. It was just this blur of craziness. And I was talking to my kids, like, "Oh my God, you know, this is what's happening. It's so insane." And I said to them, I was like, you know, I always like kind of like had this suspicion about my brother, and like, you know, me and your dad were always like kind of like vigilant about it. Like cause we had said to them before, like, just like, you know, look out for your uncle, you know? And, they were like, yeah, no, I know. And it's kind of crazy. He is weird, but no. And then later on that night, my youngest, my daughter, came to me and said that the other brother who had died actually had been molesting her when my mom was supposed to be like babysitting her after school. I think my mom would like maybe like leave and go do whatever, do stuff, and like leave her with my brother, the disabled one, who he died like a year after my husband died, and that was kind of after he died I left. And so I guess my child felt safe enough, you know, at this point, and this whole stuff was triggering everything. And yeah, so that was like a year ago that it all kind of fell into my lap, how deep like all of the dysfunction and the destruction goes. And, you know, that's my child, that's my husband's child. It's, you know, brought up a lot of stuff, just like me, you know, thinking about him a lot, and just how sad I am for it all, and how disgusted I am. And, you know, my mom raised 2 pedophiles. That's like fact. I mean, I'm using the term loosely, and I'm a professional, but look, she raised one who never left mommy, and mommy's married to him, and now he's been watching child pornography, I know, for decades. And my mom's been sleeping on top of it. And then the other one is a monster. And I knew that, I didn't know, but there was murmurs in the family that brother had molested my cousin. Again, like this would have been before I was born, and they were young. And he also got accused of molesting another girl, and I testified for the defense in that case, like that, like, I don't know, he had good relationships with his niece and nephew, and he didn't get convicted, but now I kind of get it. Like he had weird boundary stuff too. Like I saw him naked too much, but I don't believe I was ever abused by my brothers, but I think that it was just like this nest of disgusting dysfunction between them and my mother and me and my mother and everyone. And, yeah, it's just been shocking and sad, but because it's so shocking, it's sort of invalidating. It's like finally the family that I felt like I had, but you couldn't really see it, like they, you know, like the light has been shined on it. Like it is that bad. All my intuition about all of it was right all along. So it's like horribly painful. And I feel a little bit better, like just recently, because I reached out to a couple of my aunts. My mom's one of her sisters, the other one's dead, and like her sister-in-law. They're my aunts. I don't know either of them that well, but I've known them my whole life. And I kind of laid out a lot of this stuff to them. It was briefer, but kind of just, you know, you guys saw what she did to my dad, and like she was doing a lot of horrible behavior, and like the way she treated me was awful. And, you know, all of this other shit has come out too. And, you know, I'm hurting, and I'm worried for my kids, and I'm just estranged completely from my mom, and I kind of need my family. And, you know, my mom and sister called me immediately. And we had a pretty good conversation, and she kind of validated a lot. Although, you know, the whole extended family, my mother's family is the only family I know. My mother couldn't stand my dad's family. And, after he died, like we had nothing to do with them. So I only know her family, and I always feel like it's hers, and I don't know, like she controls everything. And they've kind of let a lot of stuff slide. They saw how badly she treated my dad, and they know that, you know, she's not well mentally. I mean, her sister said that to me. She's not well, but nobody's ever said that to me before. Nobody said that to me when I was a kid. And so it is validating, but it doesn't take away like how complicit everybody was in somebody's, like you said, she was acting pretty outrageous. And I guess that's where it's kind of all harmed me a little bit. Is like, there's a lot of outrageous behavior that has been aimed at me, or I've been affected by her.
definitely, by my husband a little bit, and by his family. And it's like, when that's all you know, it's hard to really see how outrageous it is. And I'm coming to understand that now more. And that has been helpful. Like my other aunt actually just called. I haven't talked to her, but she just called and left me a voicemail message like a couple hours ago today. So I kind of feel like maybe I have like a little bit of more of a family support system. I have my friends, but I think, and I have my sister-in-law too and her husband, but like my own family support, because, my mother and my brothers are not where it's at, but maybe some of like the extended family can be a little bit of what, we need as far as family connection. So I do feel good about that.
So how have you and your kids gone about healing from, when all this information came out, especially just really within the last year?
Well, as far as, just like grieving their dad, I think I just made sure I didn't hide from them. I mean, they knew I loved him, and I didn't hide from them I couldn't hide how upset I was. Like I said, looking back, like I was a wreck. I've been a wreck for 5 years, but like I didn't see my mom be a wreck. So I let them see me be a wreck, and I'm not, deifying the dead or like acting like he was a saint. Like I'm willing to acknowledge the things that we all kind of knew, but didn't really say about, the struggles he was having and how that affected everything, and been honest and cared about them, So we were already kind of doing pretty well. And then with all of this, when I first talked to my, my youngest, my daughter, she said that she thought she should talk to her brother about it. And I agreed. I said, I think that's good. So there's no secrets, you know what I mean? She's disclosed to us, we all know kind of we're a unit, right? And she's in counseling, and we've talked about things a little bit. We talk about how dysfunctional the whole family is. We've touched on all this stuff. It's hard. I try to be really mindful of her and her feelings, and it's like her story and her thing. And, I'm not trying to like force any healing. I'm just trying to like continue us being kind of on each other's side and a team, a family, like what it's supposed to be,
And do you do your individual therapy, and do you do a group therapy, or do you just do individual therapy yourself?
So I have done some individual therapy like over the years, and I've never had like amazing results. I've had like one kind of bad therapist for sure. Definitely a weirdo. I talk a lot. I have a friend, like my friend who witnessed the stuff happen. She's older. She's like an older sister. She knows a lot about like recovery stuff. Like she talked to me a lot about my husband's like, alcoholism and stuff, and kind of like what he must have been going through. She knew him, but only a little bit. Like they met like right before he died. And so talking to her is helpful. She has like some similar issues in her, not quite as outrageous, but like her family background is somewhat similar, some of the same kind of experiences. And she had she was in love and was with a guy, and they were going to get married for a couple of years, and he died when they were like in their 30s. So she's like in her 60s now, but she knows what it's like to lose, a partner. We worked together too, so she was helpful. Like, she was kind of like my person, like let everybody in my life know like what was going on. And my other friends, like I've been good at choosing good friends. It's hard as an adult, like when you're out of school and stuff. I floundered a little bit in life, but luckily in my 30s, kind of right before all of this went down and I needed it, I kind of, got a really good core group of friends. My other friend that I've known since, we were kids, I'm still friends with too, but, and I did some grief group therapy, like after my husband died, which is helpful. And read some books and stuff, like on narcissist mothers, and kind of trying to understand a little bit more myself, like where I am in all of this, and
how this has affected me and how I think about myself. And, you know, I think that I have kind of a negative view of myself unreasonably, you know, and so trying to like build myself up to myself a little bit, take care of my kids, you know, and also listening to podcasts, honestly. I listen to a couple of different ones, like this one. And I mean, there's different ones. I even like storytelling podcasts, just when people tell, like, you know, when people talk about themselves and I recognize it, it makes me feel better, you know? And so I think actually I might have heard about your podcast listening to another one. I think maybe you were a guest on it.
I have no idea.
I was like, oh, Narcissist. Paul Gilmartin and Mental Illness Happy Hour.
Yeah, I listened to that.
I feel like he either talked about it or somebody was on it.
I've never been on that podcast. If I was on that podcast, I'd have a lot more listeners.
Well, I feel like that's where I heard about yours.
Really?
So I don't know.
Oh.
Maybe.
Oh.
There's a connection in my mind for sure. Maybe somebody mentioned it or something. I don't know. Yeah, that's a good podcast. That helped me a lot. Just listening to other people talk about their own struggles. Because some of this stuff is a lot of people have anxiety. A lot of people have like difficult family relationships. They're not exactly like mine. A lot of people have self-doubt. You know, a lot of people struggle. Even if on the outside it looks like, you know, you're functioning. Stuff is hard, man. It's really, really hard to look at like all of the bad things in your life, you know, even if, well, in my case, you know, I don't feel like I have a lot to atone for. You know, I atone to myself really for like doubting myself or thinking badly about myself. I did a pretty good job with a pretty lousy hand. And, you know, my husband and I did too. Like I said, I really am coming into realizing that we did create something as imperfect or whatever as we are. We created something that we did not have, like that we lacked. Like, you know, you can tell that my children were not raised by someone like my mother. And she would tell me, like, when I was young, like, just you wait and you'll have a teenager and it'll be awful and they'll hate you. And, you know, it's terrible. You have children, they hate you and stuff like that. And that's not really the case. Like, it didn't happen that way. I've never had real big struggles. There's been issues, and kind of my husband had more to do with some of that. Like, he and my oldest sort of butted heads. They're both males. And my husband was just not equipped, I think, to have like a teen. He hadn't dealt with his own teenage trauma. And I think it was hard for him, triggering in some weird way, to have like a teenage son. And I did not like that dynamic. And I was trying to, you know, help that. You know, I was always trying to be a good wife and mother. You know, I love these people. They're my family. And so I guess like I'm really recognizing actually that I have a healthy relationship with my kids, and it's a little bit hard for me because I never had that. I never had an example of a good marriage, and I never had a good example of a good parent. And so being a good spouse and being a good mother kind of came naturally to me, but also being that, it's almost like I don't recognize it. Like, my kids will come and talk to me about stuff. I'm like, oh my God, like, whatever, like, who cares? Like, I don't know. Sometimes I feel like, you know, they're coming to me and just like telling me about their day. And like, that's sort of, I realize that's odd to me because I would never do that. I had no kind of relationship with my mother like that. Like, we never did things together. Like, she didn't enjoy my company. I mean, she amused herself in my presence by being mean to me or whatever, but you know, we never had that like kind of mom-daughter relationship where, you know, there's things we did together or whatever. No, we did things that she wanted to do, you know, and she just like controlled the whole thing. It had nothing to do with me or her enjoying me. And I literally enjoy my kids. Like, I have that kind of relationship with my daughter. We do like to do stuff together. Like, we do have like our things. And I don't know.
me and my kids share in each other's lives in ways that I didn't with my mother, and I had no chance to with my father. And it feels odd sometimes. Like, I kind of have to recognize, like, this feels odd to you because you, like, this is like nothing you've ever seen, you know?
But you're doing it, and you're a good mom. And, you know, you came from you came from a background where a lot of people wouldn't have been able to become a lawyer, you know, and, you know, be self-sufficient. You know, you came from a family where your mom wanted you and everyone to be doting on her. And in that role right there, you became, you know, you won the law. I'm not going to say the lottery because you did that yourself. You know, there was no luck involved there. You did it. And then, you know, you got married. You had your ups and downs there. Your husband passed away, but, you know, you still have these two children. You created this family that you never had with unconditional love from your children, and you're involved in their lives. And even though it might feel weird, it's this thing that you were never used to, but you're getting to what you want, and you worked for it. You know, it wasn't easy. You had every corner. There was something always around a corner to try and stop it from happening, but you still got to where you are, and you should be extremely proud of yourself for you know, fighting. Even though, you know, I say this sometimes because people listen and they don't get to where you are. Everyone is brave and tough for whatever they do, but, you know, you've gotten to this place.
Absolutely.
You've gotten to this place, and you still have, you know, half your life left to have all these other things happen to you and to heal. And, you know, you're in that process now. It sounds like, you know, you're still you're in the beginning to, like, whatever stage still. There's still probably a lot of stuff that you don't even know that, you know, maybe you still have to deal with. But, I mean, it's remarkable, and you should be extremely proud of yourself. So I just wanted to tell you that, and that you're, you know, if you don't hear it from other people or you don't believe it, that you're loved and you're lovable. And, you know, I've talked to you this whole time, and even before we went on, and, you know, your voice is infectious. So, you know, I'm sure you're a good friend to everyone. And, you know, just that's, you know, thank you for being here and sharing your story.
Thank you for saying such nice things about me.
Oh, well, you're welcome.
It is. I do hear it, but it is hard. You know, I do have people that love me, but it is hard for me to, like, for it to sink in, you know?
Yeah, for it to sink in and for you to believe it.
Yes. Yeah, that's hard for me.
So before we leave today, are there any words of wisdom or advice for anyone who's gone through the same thing as you and is dealing with it on a day-to-day?
That if it feels hard, it is really hard. And if it's really hard, it's because you're, like, doing the work, you know? I've seen a lot of people in, like, my family, my husband and his family, like, sweep up stuff under the, you know, you don't examine the difficult things. Trust your gut, and, you know, if things don't feel right to you, they're probably not, and you should explore that, you know? And there may be things that you've done that you regret, like I've done things that I regret, or, you know, circumstances that are just unfortunate, and you just kind of have to, like, it's kind of all a grieving process. You have to grieve what you've lost in a lot of different ways. People have to do that. They lose things in a lot of different ways. And it's hard to kind of grapple with that and come to terms with that and feel all of the negative feelings and think all of the obsessive thoughts and, you know, not be able to sleep for, you know, years. Like, this is kind of how it's been for me for the last few years. But that means it always, as shitty as it feels, like, you're always then progressing a step, like, when you feel that way, you know, and it gets easier. Like, the more you can kind of do that, the more you're able to sort of push through it all. And you're right that I'm lucky in a way that I think I have some level of resilience, right? Obviously, I have some kind of like survivor instinct. So everybody's got that in whatever way, like latch onto that, you know, survive like how you can. But honor yourself in it, you know, like, and honor the pain because it's real.
Well, Rain, from the bottom of my heart, thank you very much for being here today and sharing your story. I know it was difficult. You know, we were talking about some really heavy things today. So thank you from the bottom of my heart for being here with me.
Thank you for being here.
Oh,
really?
Oh, you're
like I want to thank you.
Well, thank you.
Oh,
continue. I'm waiting for more.
You're amazing too. I can't believe, like, I don't even know how you got this wonderful idea. You're helping so many people. You helped me. I'm sure that all of the story and your guests are helping people too. I don't know if I'll help anybody, but you know, maybe you'll hear some good stories. You helped me, and I am so grateful for you. And then so for all the people who are courageous enough to, you know, tell their stories to you. Like I really mean it when I say, like, hearing other people's stories, no matter what they are. It could be about narcissism that resonates with me, but even just, you know, stories about people and their lives and their emotions, like, it's healing for all of us to share these things. And no, this isn't, you know, in person. We're not in the same room. It's not a group of close friends, but sometimes a stranger, you know, and their story and their understanding of you can be the thing that you need, you know. Not everybody that's like super close to you can really always fill all your needs, you know. No one person, right, can fill all your needs. And this is a great way, I think, for people to kind of like share their experiences and maybe either learn from each other's or at least know that you're not alone, you know.
And, you know,
so thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.
And you're lovely, and your voice is amazing. I mean, you do this stuff like a pro. You're great.
Thank you. And while we're doing the thank you me, let's thank one person that you mentioned in the email. If she's listening, which is Ashley from the Ashley episode, which resonated a lot with you. So, if Ashley, if you're listening to this, you know, this episode was inspired, you know, by Rain. Listening to yours is a big inspiration for her to come on. So, for everyone who's listening, who's been on the show before, just remember, you know, there's so many people out there that have been inspired by you. You may not know it, but they are, and they're changing their lives because of you. So for all of you, myself and Rain are thanking you today.
Yay.
And that's it. So thank you. And for everyone else who is listening, I hope you have a good night.